Hi Ananta sir. Hi Samir, good to see you.
Hi, hi Samir. Hi, hi everyone.
Hi everyone. Hi Anant.
How are you,
Good to
Samir?
see you again, Anant.
Yeah. Good to see you again as well.
Ma'am is also here. Hi ma'am. Do you have any presentations, Samir, Ananta ma'am?
No, we don't.
No. Okay.
If you're asking me, no, we don't.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon. Good morning.
Hi Matt.
Hi there.
Hi, good afternoon.
I think for mics and cameras, everything working fine. If you have any presentations, we can just do a test run before that.
The only issue that I've got is I'm having to join from a public space, unfortunately. So I'm hoping that the sort of sound is okay. There might be a little bit of background noise, but is it sounding okay?
Yeah, we don't have
It
any
is
background
absolutely
noise.
fine. Yeah, it is okay.
Great, thank you.
We have still 10 minutes. People are joining. As Vimal sir joined. So we're here. Hi, Krishna sir.
Hello, Satyam. Hello.
Yes, sir. Hi.
Most of the speakers have joined.
Yes, yes, sir. Most of the speakers are here.
Okay, okay, fine. I'm there. Let me know if you need anything. Huh? Okay. Sure.
Sure, sir. Hi, sir.
Yeah, I am audible.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay.
We'll just start in a minute.
For our panel members, if I'm right, I'm not sure we've got Sriskanda on the call yet, unless I'm not seeing it correctly. I think we've got Anantha and Samir, but
Yes, he will join in a minute.
Satyam, Siriskand is already joined. Just check that he's muted, I think. Bring him as a panelist.
Okay, I'll just check in the list.
Mm. Siriskand, can you raise your hand so we can able to identify you?
Yeah, I'm here now.
Yeah.
So I think we can start now. So welcome everyone in 3.12 talk series, and I would like to welcome Mr. Vimal Kumar, MECS India lead and co-founder of Finovista, to take it from here. So
Yeah, thank you, Satyam. So welcome all. Just give me some time to take my screen presentation mode. Yeah, so hope my screen is visible.
not yet, sir.
Just a minute. Is visible now? Hello?
Yeah, it's coming.
Yeah.
Yes, it's
Okay.
not video.
So, yeah, welcome all for the third talk series, third phase, last session. We are going to conclude today. Going to conclude the third phase, and each phase is consisted 12 modules. So it's a very landmark achievement we have. And today's session is going to focus on the integrating 6.2, 6.4. As we know that this is a very, very important topic when we talk about that adding the carbon and quality, and most importantly in the era of the quality of carbon is become very important. And we have a very good panelist will talk in details. I will not take too much time on this. However, like to highlight very, very interesting aspects. When India added in 6.2, 6.4, they mentioned that the project has to be on the PPP mode. So PPP under means public-private partnership. So here we are looking at a very large scale opportunity where the good opportunity for the carbon developer, the carbon investors, and we can expect some good money also. We are also trying to do trying to understand that how the carbon market is going to be look like. And we have also floated a poll in our WhatsApp group. So we request also to give whatever the amount you feel. So this will help us in generating the good and real time data. So as you know, MECS is an 8-year program. Now it is extended till 2030. And we are geographically diverse, multicultural, transdisciplinary. We are working with a numerous partner with the private sector, academia, research, and we are from Finovista. Finovista is in-country partner for MECS program in India. Now, what is talk series? So Toxeries is a very interesting and important tool to connect and engage with the stakeholder, diverse range of like-minded people, enthusiasts, people who are ready to and who are committed to change the landscape. And your role will always become a very important when we say that we need to have the good people who are tool as a talk series is actually helping us. And we have over 2200 plus global registration, 1500 people is already attended. And through the our LinkedIn post or through our social media post, the numerous people are actually taking benefits through the reports. So it is available for public consumption. And why e-cooking is important, so I will not spend too much time because most of the people are aware. However, in the today's parlance is very important. When we talk about bringing the SDG and impact and bringing the carbon as a quality, so the lot of thing is going to play in a role. Electricity is going to be the falling in the most of the upper side of the hand, and which actually can give a lot of benefit when we talk about bringing the carbon into this. As a noble initiative in India, we started with the India become energy surplus nation by 2020. Then India has launched the GoElectric campaign, where the electric vehicle and most importantly electric cooking is talked about, and they are promoting at the campaign level and not at the program level, at campaign level. Then the star level has come. So B is focusing on the star leveling, which signify the efficiency of the devices. So this is already there. Then the government of India through a MOPNG that committee suggested that in a green shift report, 25% cooking is possible through electricity in India. And we at MECS also believe that 40% cooking is going to be possible. So everything is actually looking very good, and it is a positive direction. And then the next point, like PM Saure Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana, so I'll translate. It's they are actually under this scheme, Prime Minister free electricity up to 300 units through the solar. So here is the entire today's discussion is also very important that we are going to have the solar panel and how better quality carbon, what will be the baseline fuel. So this also giving a good boost. And when we say PPP mode, so this PM scheme is already a government scheme. So integrations will be very easy. I think there is a one company which is Systema Bio is already doing a project with Uttar Pradesh government under the PPP route. So movement is already started happening in this level for the biogas projects. Then we have a rooftop solar financing scheme, and government is financing at the very cheap rate, 7%. And then GST Council is actually also reduced the GST from 18 to 12. The last point, which is interesting for you, is that formally government of India has added clean cooking under the PPP road in 6.4. So it's a big achievement, and let us see what our experts feel and the investor is going to feel about this. When we talk about e-cooking, it's actually bring a lot of different sets of devices. So I don't want to go in details, but the electric pressure cooker is the most energy efficient device, and the most of the cooking which require the saute and boiling can be cooked with this device. Then induction is the another device which is versatile but not as efficient or convenient as the electric pressure cooker. Then we have a rice cooker, then we have a roti maker, then we have an air fryer, and then the new category which is emerging over last 1 year is the radiant or infrared based cooking, which actually heating happening at the device level. So the lot of people actually able to feel the heat generated from the coil. So this is actually the lot of Indian manufacturers are actually bringing this product, and they're very happy this product is doing good in the market. So another interesting what we look in India and how this is actually happening. So our Prime Minister himself is a very positive about the rooftop-based solar cooking with a battery. And in his quote, he said, if 250 million household is using the solar rooftop with a battery, then the cost of this solution battery will down, and ultimately is also going to electric vehicle segment. And as we know, we have already PLI scheme for the solar PV and the battery. So ultimately it is going to help the sector. So good opportunity again. Maybe the deep rural areas is a good place where the solar can be, and then other part where the electricity can be promoted for the cooking. And now to achieve this, we have to bet. So maybe some people know bet is. So we need to change the behavior. We need to ensure that user is accepting the change. So behavior change is going to be very important. Of course, economics need to be brought in. And when we say economics need to brought in, so the devices and the fuel cost has to be cost effective. And all this come through the technology, or in today's case, it should be innovation best candidate here. So it should be innovations. Innovation can be in the carbon, innovation can be in the device level, innovation can be the business model level. So anything which is required, it has to be done. And so with this, I pass our speaker, Ms. Seema. Snigdha is representing Government of India Ventures Convergence Energy Services Limited. She oversees the carbon credit assets creation and monetization from the Gram Ujala and Public E-Mobility Program. She graduated from Master in Science from the Pennsylvania, Carnegie Mellon University, Pennsylvania. And she started her development policy career at World Bank IFC in Washington, where she worked over a half decade on the knowledge paper, including the good practices for the financial consumer protection. She returned to India with and started serving with the Solar Mama at Barefoot College, a not-profit social enterprise leading projects in Assam tea plantation. If you know, the Northeast part is very interesting to work in this segment. Ms. Burma has interviewed by She Inspire, a program by Sansad, which is the Rajya Sabha, which is a Parliament TV, invited by as a fellow by Monash University, Australia, and receive a Woman Power Award in 2024 by India Smart Grid Forum. So thank you all, and I like to hand over the mic to Snigdha. Okay. Over to you.
Hi, Vimal, thank you so much, and my apologies for such a long description. So it's great to be here, and I'm very thankful for MECS and Finovista to be continuing this engagement and focusing so strongly on carbon credit for cook stove projects. I think it's a really it's something that would eventually be a great way to fund rural development and bringing clean cooking into the rural areas in India and elsewhere. So I'll maybe straight jump to talking about the project, about the theme. So first of all, it's a very timely discussion. After Baku, after the adoption of the Article 6.4 and 6.2 mechanisms, it's a huge window of opportunity for projects that, such as in for cooked stoves, and the fact that the Ministry of Environment also in June came up with their theme of selected themes in for Article 6.4 and 6.2, which also included solar cooked stoves, as Mr. Vimal was pointing out. So that's a really great opportunity that's coming up. I would maybe talk a little bit about the policy potential, and then maybe talk about how the Article 6 has an opportunity to bring more rigor to credit issuance and overcome some of the challenges that we are seeing currently in the global carbon market space. And then we happy to take things forward during the course of the discussions. So first of all, yes, I think the list that the MOEF came up with in June included not just the new technologies, but also more development-focused programs such as cook stoves. And I'm hoping that eventually there will also be inclusion of more rural-based projects such as LED bulb distribution, energy efficiency projects, and so forth. Of course, the PPP model is a great opportunity for an institution such as CSL, which so we started with the Gram Ujala scheme about in 2021, where the projects where we distributed about 1 crore 10 million LED bulbs in rural India, and the viability gap funding for these bulbs was entirely expected to come out of carbon credits. So these projects that we under which we implemented the LED bulb distribution program in rural India were initially registered in CDM and then later moved to voluntary carbon markets, which is the Vera registry. And we now have nearly 1 million verified carbon units generated in this project. And that being one of the first projects that CSL undertook on carbon credits also helped build our capacity in terms of implementing a methodology that is a CDM methodology, and then eventually we've also at CSL gone on to register our public e-mobility projects in international registries, which are also very much more bring more rigor and stronger monitoring mechanisms. So one of the projects that we registered is on the public EV charging project, where we introduce an IoT-based monitoring mechanism for the project, which eventually for the credit issuances. So eventually, that is also the conversation that's happening globally in terms of bringing more rigor to the methodologies and introducing technology-based monitoring systems. So I think we've been able to contribute to that sort of understanding, and we hope that as with Article 6, when the methodologies are revisited, there will be better focus on integrity of the carbon credits that are issued under Article 6.2 and 6.4 as based on the learnings we've had in the voluntary markets and with CDM. Another point I think would be of importance to the cook stove project that we are discussing here would be I think the MECS co-developed the metered and measured energy cooking device methodology, which is in the gold standard. I think that's a really good example of how an IoT-based metering system can ensure that the credits that are created track the utilization of the cooking appliances. And that methodology, I had the lucky chance to also see on the ground through a project being run by Microenergy Credits. And I'm really happy that they are here. And I'm looking forward to hearing about their experience in coming up with, in implementing a project under an IoT-based methodology and which is recognized by the gold standard. And I'm hoping that eventually such methodologies do get introduced into the Article 6.4, and therefore overall as a system, the carbon credit market is able to provide a more rigorous and more evolved system for carbon credit trading, which eventually will, of course, be a great opportunity for a country like India for revenue generation and as well as meeting our own NDCs. I think I'll stop there. And, if you'd like, Mr. Risha, if you would like to, have any specific, would like me to contribute to any specific questions, I'd be happy to do that, or, be part of the discussions as we take them forward.
Yeah, thank you. It's very insightful discussion. So with this, now we move to the next session, which is the panel discussion on this topic. So it is moderated by Professor Matthew Leach. He's the Professor of Energy and environment system, and lead for the clean energy, finance, and data analysis at MECS program. He is a chartered engineer and has been researching and teaching on energy policy, low carbon technology, decentralized energy system, and energy modeling for more than 30 years. Within MECS, Matthew work has included development of tools and analysis for the cost of cooking and the financial, environmental, and the social cost and benefit for the cooking transition applied for the numerous countries in Africa, South and Southeast Asia, and especially he has played a very vital role in providing the modeling for the government of India officials. We have shared a lot with him. So that was the additional from my side. But yeah, most of his recent work is supporting the development in digital data carbon methodology and modern cooking. And like Snigdha mentioned, Matt has played very big role into that method development and all. So with this introduction, I will hand over the mic to Matt to take it from here and then introduce his panelist. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Vimal. Just apologies if there's any background noise. I'm afraid I'm having to join from a public space, so I hope it'll be manageable. Thank you, Vimal, very much for that very detailed and fulsome introduction. I think Vimal has already given you a good overview of the MECS program, and we're really well represented as a program in India by Finovista, by Vimal and Sheetal and colleagues. And so I'm not going to say anything more about that. In terms of my own personal role, again, Vimal has given you a little sense of that. I mean, I'm an engineer by original background, so I like to get into the details, the technicalities and the calculations and so on of things. And within the MECS program, my main responsibility is really trying to help lead and coordinate some of the kind of modeling and more quantitative analysis work that we do. In the last couple of years, a lot of that attention has been focused on the carbon markets, and in particular, while I wasn't involved right at the beginning, as has been mentioned, MECS was involved really in initiating and then funding the development of the measured and metered methodology for cooking, which is now on the books with gold standard. And we're, I think, quite proud of that as a development. We're very pleased with the work with Gold Standard, and also with Climate Impact Partners, who in a sense actually developed the methodology. And we piloted that methodology with ATEC, who's an Australian-based company doing induction cooktops, and we piloted it with projects in Cambodia and Bangladesh. And we thought we were working with the very first company who was trialing the metered methodology, but in fact it turned out that quietly in the background, Microenergy Credit, who's on the call with us today, were actually developing the very first project. So we'll hear a little bit more about that as we go on. Since we developed the metered methodology, there has been ongoing work within the MECS program and with a whole range of partners to try and make sure that we keep that metered methodology right up at the top of the very highest integrity around carbon credits. And it was great to hear some of the comments from Snigdha about some nice comments about the metered methodology, but also about the hopes that methodology, or at least the approach to digital data for clean cooking, could eventually be taken into Article 6.4. And I hope we'll get into a little bit of that conversation going forward in the next half hour or so. So that's really enough from myself. In terms of the panel, we have a great panel, lots of experience, and in particular, the thing I'm really pleased about is that we both have somebody who's really studying, in a sense, the detail of the methodologies that are going forwards in Article 6.2 and 6.4, but also representatives of two of the really leading companies, the practitioners who are already, doing clean cooking projects, have been doing a lot of stuff with projects in the voluntary carbon market, but are now really leading the way in how to move into 6.2 and then eventually into 6.4. So I think there's a lot to hear about, and hopefully there'll be a lot to learn for those of you perhaps who are a little bit further back along that journey. The panel is not that well gender balanced, however. So I'm afraid there's rather a lot of males associated. So it's great. Let's regard Snigdha as let's regard you as part of our panel too, to help our gender balance a little bit. Very brief introductions to our panelists. So we have Anantha Kartik, who's Vice President of the Carbon Program at Up Energy. He has a long track record in climate and sustainability. And Up Energy have been really active users already of the metered methodology for clean cooking in the voluntary market. And they're now focused on originating new projects into 6.2 and looking closely, I'm sure, at 6.4. We have Sriskandar Subramanian, who's the Chief Sustainability Officer at Micro Energy Credit, who I already mentioned, and he oversees the carbon program. So we have the carbon leads from those two organizations. He also has long experience in sustainability issues. Previous roles very relevant to this conversation include the Head of Sustainable Development at the Gold Standard Foundation and the registration and issuance team at the UN FCCC. And Micro Energy Credits, as I mentioned, have had the first registration and issuance of carbon credits under the metered methodology. And that's a great accolade, but also moving forwards into Article 6. And finally on the panel, we have Dr. Samir Thapa, who's a research associate with my own organization, with MECS. He's part of the finance team at MECS, and he looks at the possibility of carbon and impact financing generally. He's also got long experience in sustainable energy. He's had roles at UNDP, at Winrock, and at AEPC in Nepal, across financing, enhancing productive end use, gender, social inclusion, and decentralization more widely. Now, we've got about 45 minutes or so for the panel session now. I've invited each of the panelists to make an initial short sort of set of comments from their own perspectives for 2 or 3 minutes, a little bit introducing their organization's kind of role with respect to Article 6, and beginning to hint at, I guess, some of the things that they're most influenced by and interested in. And then I've got some questions that I'll put to the panel, and we'll try and get some discussion going. And we've got a little bit more time than I expected, so I'm sure we'll get to some Q&A, hopefully, with the audience. I guess we're asking people to put questions into the chat, and we can draw some of those out in the kind of public Q&A a little bit later on. So let me turn to each of our panelists and ask them to make their initial contributions. I'm going to change the order a little bit. So I'm going to sort of, in a sense, try and start from the slightly more general top down and ask Samir to make his initial comments first. Then I'll invite Anantha and finally Sriskandar. So if Samir, you could give us your first comments, that would be very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Matt, and thank you for the organizers for inviting me and organizing this event today. Well, as Professor Matt said, I'm part of the financing team within the MECS and looking at ways to finance modern and electric cooking services, and also looking at how the co-benefits side of it through the impact measurements could be built into that. So in terms of the activities within MECS, what we are trying to do with Article 6 is to use it in the partner countries that we're working with to scale up particularly electric and other modern cooking services. And in that one, the other thing that we are doing is also, following up the Article 6 Paris Agreement credited mechanism regularly as a regular observers, and also providing feedbacks and inputs on the outputs with respect to standards and procedures. And in this one, I would also like to mention a recent event that we had also organized prior to COP, a webinar titled, Article 6 and Cooking Transitions, where we had tried to analyze the new developments with respect to, creating baseline as well as the country-level regulations with respect to fees and contributions on the implications of, trying out a new clean cooking project activities. And also, trying to find out the challenges and opportunities with respect to Article 6 going forward from the sector stakeholders, And and I think like going forward, having this panel discussion immediately after that one adds to the body of work that is going to be useful going forward in 2025, I guess, for projects to really materialize and start crediting, registering, and issuing credits. I'll stop at that. Thank you, Professor.
Great, thank you very much. So deeply involved in trying to help influence the way in which standards and methodologies are taken forwards. But we're obviously not participating in the carbon markets directly ourselves, but hoping to learn a lot from those who are. So let's turn to a couple of those who are. Anantha, could I ask you to unmute and give us your initial comment?
Yeah, thanks, Matt, and thanks to MECS and Finovista for the invitation here. So Atmanirbhar is a platform that supports equitable decarbonization journey for global South countries and global South. And by saying that, of course, the project types that we support are that kind of has both SDG 1 and SDG 13, which is poverty alleviation, and also the climate action. And one of that, we're present in 8 countries in Africa, and the biggest problem there in Africa is the clean cooking, access to safe water. And of course, we have other removal-based, project types that are, biochar and agroforestry. So we practice community-first approach by introducing technologies and practices to achieve, scalable but also low and zero emission solutions. We were the first one globally to issue the carbon credits on electric cooking back in 2022, when I don't think we had an option for MECS meter device methodology that time. But soon after that, I think now we have one of the large program that is developed under gold standard using the meter device methodologies to gather the voluntary carbon market. And the approach that we do is, of course, we develop high quality, high integrity, carbon project with a robust MRV system. That there comes the meter device methodology. And our role in Article 6, of course, as we have more clarity after this COP29, before that, even we started discussion on bilateral projects. So we have a couple of projects in Ghana that are in pipeline. One of that is using the meter device methodology calculation approach for electric cooking. And we are also keenly waiting for the project type eligibility from all the markets that we operate to be submitted to UNFCCC, so we can also be the first one to register a lot of 6.4 projects in the markets that we operate. That's about us, and look forward to the discussions here.
Good, thank you. Yeah, so just teasing us with some ideas about projects which are in development and coming through. Thank you very much. So, Sriskandar, do you want to give us your initial comments, please?
Yeah, so thanks, Professor Leach. Hello, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. My name is Sriskan, and I work with microenergy credits. I'd like to begin by thanking MECS and Finovista for this opportunity to share some thoughts on Article 6 in India. Microenergy credits, or MEC, not to be confused with MECS, works with microfinancial institutions and equipment manufacturers in the developing world to deploy distributed clean energy technologies like cook stoves. In terms of our track record, we are in the top 5 issuing program of activities under the erstwhile CDM. And also, as Snigdha and Professor Leach mentioned, we registered and issued the first set of credits using the gold standard weighted methodology a year and a half or so back. In terms of our business model, we partner with microfinancial institutions in India. We currently have close to 20 MFI partners, and we've also had an active carbon program in India since 2009. Since 2020, once the Kyoto markets ended, we have been focused on the voluntary carbon market, as I'm sure a lot of you have also. However, now with renewable energy-based cooking being allowed under Article 6 in India, we are looking forward to seeing how we could potentially deploy these technologies and operationalize a program. And we've already taken the first few steps in this direction. We are initiating pilots for solar cooking within our communities here in India. and we are hoping to get some feedback in the coming months that can be incorporated back into the design. Thanks once again to the organizers, and I look forward to brainstorming Article 6 in India with this group.
Great, thank you all very much for those initial comments and for keeping so well to the suggested time. So look, I'd like to start with a pretty broad kind of question, I think, just posed to each of you, just really to try to draw out your thoughts about, in a sense, the kind of key challenges about what key challenges need to be overcome for us to bring projects, for you to be able to take projects directly into Article 6. If you've got examples of those in relation to India in particular, then of course that would be of particular interest to our wider audience. But many of those challenges are in a sense global and pan countries. So please let's take some initial thoughts from each of you, and then we'll see whether we can kind of bounce the conversation around a little bit. I mean, let's stick with the order that we had already. So let's see whether, Samir, have you got some particular thoughts about where you see the current challenges and where the kind of main pieces of work that need to be done to bring Article 6 projects through to a really practical level?
Thank you, Professor Matt. I think this touches upon like two different things. One is regulatory, I guess, and the other one is with respect to the methodologies that we discussed earlier as well. I mean, this year, Article 6.4 SB has been working tremendously, with respect to particularly, adopting and getting it approved in the COP, the mechanism methodologies, and other documents, especially the Sustainable Development Tool, which will be applied across the different projects as a mandatory kind of tool, and that brings into all the the safeguards and integrity aspects into the credits that are generated. But so far there has been some work going on with respect to introducing methodologies, including also the clean cooking methodologies, specifically with respect to revising the AMS2G and AMS1E. But then I guess with respect to what my colleagues also mentioned on the panel, their attempts with respect to using Article 6.4, the challenge will be with respect to how to incorporate the developments that are going on with respect to independent standards on those methodologies with respect to MMECD, and as well as clear that's being kind of worked out at the moment. So I mean, with respect to the issues such as the use of a different specific energy consumption factors to bring in the efficiency of new devices such as induction and EPCs into those revisions of those methodologies, and how far the CDM, given its stance on conservativeness of the development of methodologies, will be able to take up those recommendations. And on the regulatory front, I think I'm not too sure. I'm not an Indian expert, but just in terms of looking around with respect to the literature, I understand that within the larger Indian carbon market, there's an understanding that the compliance mechanism will be complementing the voluntary offset mechanism will be complementing the compliance trading scheme. And while I guess I understand that the regulations on the compliance front has been established, the regulation as such, the guidance is yet to be finalized for the voluntary offset mechanism. And I think if you have that regulation for the voluntary offset mechanism ready, then the project developers will have that regulatory framework to start developing the projects. And if that regulatory framework could be developed in alignment with Article 6 requirements and requirements from other independent standards, then that will kind of create a path towards for getting better credits with high integrity. And if that regulatory mechanism that India is supposed to is come out with, then that could be used with other mechanisms, such as I understand, for the export of its products with respect to the imposition of mechanisms such as carbon border adjustment mechanisms from the European Union side. So I think that regulatory mechanism for the voluntary offset mechanism. If that is not yet there, needs to be there for the project developers to freely develop projects.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, I think for me, one of the kind of key things, of course, is the extent to which all the work that's gone on into high integrity in the voluntary market can kind of transfer almost directly into the CDM and into Article 6.4. But as you're indicating, there may well be additional safeguards and additional elements of conservation and conservativeness is the word that may be sought. Anantha, do you want to add to that any or second any of the points that have already been made, or add additional constraints?
Yeah, definitely. I think what Samir mentioned, totally makes sense. There is those challenges. Just to take a step back, like why a carbon market or Article 6 is the right solution. I just wanted to how to make it more effective here is like we've had Ujjwala scheme in India. That's a great scheme, that provided the basic connection and access, but it failed to address the continuous usage, like how to be able to provide like a long-term continuous subsidy. So that's where like Article 6 or any carbon projects comes into play. That any technology access is one thing, but how to continuously engage with those end users to understand their affordability and make them continue to use that and tap into those health benefits that comes by that. So I think that's where the Article 6 and any carbon market is rather much more effective. The challenges are there, and for example, the electricity, renewable component is definitely increasing every year with India, and that gives an opportunity to have an electric project that is tapped from grid. But of course, the eligibility under Article 6, whether only the renewable cooking is allowed, because there is high cost of involved in renewable cooking. There needs to be like stronger bilateral opportunities that has to be explored by India. And from a framework and standard perspective, I think, like I already mentioned, this Article 6.2 requires a lot of more bilateral agreements. Other countries in global South have already started signing up bilateral agreements. I think it takes a lot of journey as well from an MOU stage to get to a bilateral agreement. It takes probably a year or two. So I think really India have to start looking at a lot more opportunity to sign more agreements there. And with regard to 6.4, from a methodology perspective, I think Samit mentioned that we have AIM-1E, that is basically the renewable cooking component, but we don't have anything for under 6.2 for grid connected electric cooking. So I think there is need, like Matt mentioned, about bringing meter device similar to meter device methodology to be eligible under 6.4. And also the ease of approval process when it comes to 6.4, like how the projects are being approved by the government. So that has to be transparent and also communicated the framework structure and everything. The larger key challenges when it comes to rural and semi-urban from an end user and success of that Article 6 movement is the behavioral change aspect, especially for electric cooking. We wouldn't have a successful project if we fail to address continuous strong higher usage. So that comes with deeper understanding the end users behavioral, like what is the cooking that they do and where the electric products are the right fit. So that engagement and is really important for the success of Article 6 here.
Thank you. Yeah, that adds a richness, a lot there. Actually, just one point, just to pick up on with you on that. You mentioned that for 6.2, obviously there's a need for the bilateral arrangements and agreements, and that takes a lot of time and effort. Do you have the sense that there's almost people are there therefore in competition? Countries are in competition to attract the interest of the donor countries, the investor countries. Do you get a sense that we're beginning to see less kind of cooperation and more competition, if you like, between countries that want to get involved and want to be, everybody wants to be first, right? Everybody wants to have a program in place. Everybody wants to have a good message to give out. What's your sense of that from the ground?
I think it's the other way around in my view. I think countries are ready to have that engagement. For example, like Switzerland, Sweden, Singapore, Korea, Japan. Japan probably had, like, long back, JCM is the oldest, probably, the bilateral engagement. And countries are ready to engage. But I think that process itself is the right connection, and that discussions kind of take a lot of time to even get to that MOU stage. And after that, you'll have to go through the bilateral. So you're right, there is competition, but in my view, I think that's the other way around. I think the buyer countries are ready to engage, and it is just that the right channel. Maybe from a buyer country's perspective, they're also looking at their own capacity. Maybe few countries do not have that capacity to directly engage. They're dependent on multilateral organizations like UNDP or GGGI or World Bank to kind of support that. And but that's the capacity building on buyer side. But I see a lot of interest on the buyer, but lack that in the selling country.
Great, thank you. Sriskandar, do you want to bring your views in on kind of barriers and challenges and where we're getting to with that?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably restrict myself mostly to the end user in terms of what those key challenges could be. But the one point that I would make, to add to what Samir and Karthik have said, is the fact that I think there's still some need, for consolidation on methodologies in the Article 6.2 space. I think for Article 6.4, it is very clear for the purpose of, India for renewable energy based cooking, AMS 1E is the way to go. Of course, there's a work plan of the supervisory body to make it Article 6 and Paris compliant, which hopefully will happen sometime in 2025. But from an Article 6.2 standpoint, there are multiple methodologies which are there, right? So you've got 3 methodologies within the gold standard. Vera released their own methodology. The CCA is coming with their own methodology, which is currently under finalization. The big question that practitioners perhaps might have is which of these methodologies is actually Article 6.2 compliant already at this point. And the answer to this question is, at least to my mind, all of them need a little bit of work before they are actually truly Article 6.2 compliant. What with the rules around baseline setting to be below BAU, etc. That part still needs to be sorted out. So that is on the standard and the methodology standpoint. As far as some of the challenges in the rural and sort of semi-urban parts of India and indeed the developing world, I would like to sort of categorize the challenges in 4 brackets. The first one, and I would focus here a bit on solar conduction cooking. The first one would be on the technology itself, because although there are some prototypes and sort of models which are available, the design and having a finished product, I think, is still, I would say, a work in progress. And can sort of any solar conduction based cooking device meet some of the challenges that an end user might face, who are historically used to, say, an LPG device or a grid connected induction device. For instance, can it provide enough heat to transfer to the pot at a short notice? Will the solar panel be efficient enough to sort of capture, and then the batteries to store enough energy or sunlight during the winters and monsoons? This could be a challenge for several parts of India. On the cost part, of course, this is one of the biggest challenges, because we need to see a significant reduction in cost for these technologies in order for it to be viable. There are some efforts which have been made in this direction. And Professor Leach, I know you and I are due for a call to discuss some of these aspects. On the capacity building, and I think it was Samir who spoke about this briefly, but the behavior change element is a very critical thing, because people who are used to LPG, people who are used to induction or for what it's worth, biomass or solid fuels based cooking, These technologies need to be able to sort of match this, given the cultural diversity and sort of other priorities in different parts of India. And then also, how is stacking going to be addressed? Right, that's the perennial problem which perhaps no one has been able to solve fully in the in the clean cooking sector. The last I would say is partnerships, and I think it was Vimal who spoke about this. The government of India requires that in order for a technology or RE-based cooking intervention to be Article 6 compliant, there has to be a public-private partnership model. So what is going to be the shape and form of these partnerships? How are we going to bring in, say, different national and state agencies to participate in this? What will be their role? And whether there are going to be very clearly assigned roles and responsibilities for these different stakeholders. So these are some of the challenges which I feel we are still trying to address, and hopefully we can find a solution sometime soon.
That's great. Thank you. No, really, really helpful actually to kind of get some more of the points of detail about really just the challenges of developing a good project from where we are now, not necessarily just the things with the very high level UNFCCC processes and so on. Okay, so the other kind of question area that I wanted to kind of bring forward is I think there's a lot of sense in which work has gone on in the voluntary carbon market, and it is possible, in a sense, to make some transitions from voluntary carbon market into Article 6, and sort of transition from the voluntary carbon market to Article 6 mechanism. I guess again with India as a focus. Is that started in a successful way? Are you hopeful that is how things will go, or are there again other challenges and barriers to bring that forwards? Let's stick with the same order. First of all, Samir, any particular thoughts about that transition from voluntary to?
One thing particularly comes to my mind with respect to having followed the developments of Article 6.4, being a structured mechanism, is India has been in the forefront with respect to both CDM and voluntary carbon market registries, and I think one of the challenges will be how to justify going forward if there are any issues both in the CDM and voluntary carbon market. With CDM, it is already understandable that it can be used depending upon their time period for first NDC or as in terms of transition towards Article 6.4. But then if there are any voluntary carbon markets and their issues already remaining out there, which I think will be there. So in terms of their future uses, in terms of defining how they will be used forward. So I think that will be one of the things to look out for. And that will bring into other things like, in terms of when you are doing this transfer, both from CDM and from voluntary carbon market, there is not a set, as mentioned earlier, for other aspects as well, the set procedure for how to do it, starting with the registry at the UNFCCC level, and also, then how it will be linked to the country level with respect to the country level registries. And with the case of India, I think it will be, I don't know, given its decentralization, there will be also, kind of state level policy coming into play within that. So I'm thinking, given the volume of possible voluntary credits out there, that is something to be catered to be thought about.
Thank you. So, I think I'm hearing you say that since there aren't the clear rules or processes for that yet, but are you expecting, is that something that is being worked towards to be able to make that kind of transfer from voluntary to 6.4? Is that just a question of time, or is it something that's not really on the table yet?
It's really not on the table yet at the moment, but I with respect to voluntary carbon markets, I presume, so possibly possibly the project developers would be the one at some point in time coming up with this issue.
Okay, well, we got two project developers in front of us, so let's see their views. Anantha, how do you feel about this?
I think 4 years ago we were all transitioning our CDM projects to voluntary mechanism because we didn't have any standard that time. Now, of course, we are all looking because of the voluntary carbon price. We are going back to compliance. I think just to maybe start off with that question, I think the answer is, of course, we still have a registered CDM project, whatever we transition to voluntary, if the project type is eligible by the host country that's communicated to UNFCCC, then we already have submitted the transition request to 6.4 for those CDM projects if they're eligible, and if they're eligible, and that we could still operate that project under 6.4 with a gap. Whatever the period that we had issued in voluntary, there is no credit that we would claim under compliance on 6.4. But again, largely on 6.4 credits itself, now it is on the end use that would differentiate whether it is 6.4 credits versus voluntary credits. Now we have a voluntary project that is developed in Tanzania that has been issued an authorization letter, and now it's an Article 6 unit that we can sell the credits to either compliance opportunity like Corsia or other voluntary offsetting opportunity. So the end use is what defines, and there are voluntary carbon projects that currently probably the India. My understanding is the renewable cooking is allowed with a public-private engagement, and probably the current lot of voluntary carbon projects that are there may not directly be eligible under Indian context for Article 6 mechanism transfer or registering those volumes. Very few electric cooking project that is run by microenergy credits could still maybe fall under that category, and may still but by saying that the other markets still relevant, the problem, the need for technology depends on the country. The other countries, the problem is still like in Africa, the access is still on the access to clean energy is still on the lower energy ladder. So considering that scenario, you can still expect an improved cooking, like either biomass is still eligible under their framework. And the 6.4 project eligibility is defined, but the process and what is to be done to get those projects register under 6.4 is still the registry setup is still ongoing. Hopefully they take some learnings from CDM and continue to fast track that. But yeah, I think the approval of high integrity electric cooking projects under 6.4 is still to be accepted by we have to work a lot on that at both country side and also FCCC side.
Great, thank you. Sriskandar.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it, ultimately, I think the carbon markets, voluntary or compliance, is essentially a tool to drive climate finance. And to that end, I think the CDM, the voluntary market, as well as the Article 6, they are all essentially market-based mechanisms to support the adoption of clean cooking interventions in this case. And there is an added element of more close alignment with national priorities when it comes to the Paris Agreement. Now, the voluntary carbon market for clean cooking was largely focused still on, I would say, fossil fuels, or rather solid fuels like biomass. Electric cooking has been a very recent entrant in the VCM space. And again, as far as I can think, Article 6 in India will be completely different from what has happened in the voluntary carbon market, at least in the context of India, because none of these interventions are actually going to be eligible, whether it is solid fuels, whether it is LPG, whether it is grid-based cooking. None of these interventions, based on the list that the ministry has circulated, seem to be eligible. So from that standpoint, the transition, in a very literal sense, does not really have a lot of overlap. However, what we can learn from the VCM is what, to my mind, is very critical, right? So especially in the last 2 years, some of the issues around integrity, that's where I think we can learn and adapt to make sure that Article 6 is much more rigorous and has a lot more integrity than what the VCM is currently perceived to have. And what I would mean with that is, sorting out issues like FNRB, right, which seems to be an Achilles heel for project developers worldwide. There has to be some alignment, very science-based, that needs to be found on this issue. What is also very critical is that the tenets of the Paris Agreement are respected. And one of the key principles of the Paris Agreement is ambition. And that's the reason why I think on issues like baseline, we can't continue to look at what would be the business as usual baseline, and have to adopt something which is below BAU, and that is very critical to ensure that the ambition of the Paris Agreement is met fully.
Right, thank you. No, that's extremely helpful. I mean, I guess a follow on to the comments that several of you have made is for India as an example, the list of eligible project types is currently for cooking relatively focused and a little bit limited. What would be your expectation about how that might evolve over time? I mean, I think Sriskandar, as you've pointed out, the intention is that Article 6.4 in particular will be quite closely aligned to a country's, NDCs and their kind of long-term strategic goals, whereas obviously the VCM was not that for individual countries. But would you be expecting, do you think, that perhaps the Indian list of eligible projects might widen and evolve over time? Is it a question of start with something tightly focused and manageable, with an expectation to broaden? Do you have that sense at all from your discussions with officials? Sorry, Sriskandar, let's ask you that first of all.
Yeah, I mean, I think, to be honest, I mean, I can tell you what my opinion on this is, Professor Leach, but I think perhaps Snigdha is better placed to respond to this question. My own sense is that this list is at this moment a little bit narrow from a from a rural community and distributed technology standpoint. What I would definitely say is that it is super ambitious, and I think that is great. To start off with RE-based cooking, given that we are still, a little bit sort of away from the technology really maturing. But to answer your question, I would expect that at some point, and what I understand is that the next edit to this list is probably up in 2027, is to look at more distributed technology, categories around lighting, water purification, and even other elements like cooking. Like, for example, what does renewable energy based cooking really mean? What are the different interventions and technologies that actually entails? There is some clarity still required on that. So I would expect that this list will not be static, but it would take some time before it is expanded.
Very good. Does anybody else want to add or make any different comments to that? I don't see you. Oh, Samir. Yeah, sorry.
No, one thing that I also wanted to kind of relate back to my earlier comment on the local, of voluntary offset mechanism. And I understand that the BEE has released the sector and the illustrative technologies for the local voluntary market as well. And what I understand is that while it includes other, distributed technologies, but doesn't include clean cooking into that one. But then again, it's including within the Article 6.4, these solar-based renewables. So there is this contradictory element within India with respect to developing these regulatory frameworks. One, but the other thing that I also wanted to kind of touch upon based upon my work on regulatory issues while looking at the NDCs for different countries, because this touches upon the earlier discussion on FNRB and below business as usual requirements. That India, so far as I know, in its NDC doesn't have an absolute NDC target, but it has an emissions intensity target. So because of that, given that we know there is going to be some kind of a rebound effect, so you cannot quite quantify the absolute emissions reductions with respect to an intensity-based, emissions target. So would that influence, things like bilateral agreements and buyers, being a little bit not ready without having an absolute NDC target? Just my understanding, and also it will bring in a little bit of technicalities with respect to getting a below business as usual compared to an absolute NDC target, business as usual target compared to an intensity-based, NDC target. So those are my takes on that one.
Thank you very much. And I think I cut across Snigdha. You wanted to come in and say something?
Yeah, sorry about that. I should have raised my hand. So I just wanted to add, I do agree with what Shrikant's saying that the list is maybe needs to be revisited and maybe have a more broad approach to rural development projects like lighting, water purification, and so forth that could be included. Having said that, I'm of course, as a representative of a government company, very happy to recognize that the ministry is encouraging public-private partnerships because our first project on carbon credits, which was on rural LED distribution, is pretty much aligned to the PPP model where we collaborated with a private project developer, and of course, a similar strategy we can follow not that will fall for LED, it could also be for cook stoves. So of course for us this is great, but I do strongly think that the ministry should revisit and try to include more rural development projects because ultimately it's a great opportunity for green financing for the country as a whole. And of course, I do understand from our previous minister's comments that there may be some decision that may be required on the double counting, given our targets towards NDCs. But overall, I think this is something that the ministry should look into, and we hope that they will. But of course, as of now, it's a great opportunity for organizations like CSL.
Thank you. That's very helpful to get the kind of quasi government view kind of coming in there. I know you're not representing the government view, but thank you for those comments. Okay, we've got about 10 minutes left on this session today. We've got quite a few questions which have come through in the Q&A. There's two topics that I would like to draw out from that set of questions. And they actually kind of are represented by a number of different individual questions from particular people. So rather than kind of reading out or inviting people to unmute and put those particular questions, I'm going to kind of paraphrase them if I may. So the two things I'd like just briefly to bring to you is, first of all, in a sense, what do you feel is the role of carbon credits sort of generally, I mean, maybe Article 6, but carbon credits generally, in bringing down the costs of clean cooking projects? So it's quite a general kind of question, but I guess in particular from the MEC and the up energy perspectives, can you share with us any kind of brief perspectives on how significant the carbon market has been for delivering, affordable solutions, rural, semi-urban, urban, in India? And then the second question, which I'll come on to then, is on the IoT side, because we've talked quite a bit about metered, any kind of thoughts about the availability, the cost suitability of IoT? Is that easy? Is it a challenge? And any kind of particular comments on that? So perhaps I think those are particularly things to Anantha and Sriskandar, and then we'll see whether Samir wants to add anything. So Anantha, do you want to say, any views really on the affordability point and what carbon has brought? And if you've got any comments on the IoT side as well, that would be very
Definitely, man. Thanks for that. So hope you can still hear me. My screen is full. Hello.
Yes, can hear you.
Okay. So from an affordability standpoint, I think both on the operational level and also the unit economics of the product itself. For example, like up energy, irrespective of technology, we have 70 to 80% of the cost.
No, I think we are now losing your sound, actually. Anantha, I'm sorry, your sound is breaking up for me now. So can we possibly turn to Sriskandar, and then maybe Anantha, I don't know whether you can rejoin or see if you can improve your connection. But Sriskandar, any views from
Yeah, I think from my standpoint, there are these two different sort of aspects. And from our experience, what we have seen is that historically speaking, for biomass-based cook stove, carbon, sort of finance or climate finance does two things. Primarily, it brings down the upfront cost. It obviously removes some of those capital-related barriers upfront. But the other very significant thing that it does is that it helps you ensure a continued use of the product, right? So if a program is structured carefully, and there are after sales service systems in place, or you can use the carbon finance to increase the warranty periods, etc., of a particular product. And we have sort of dabbled with all of these different options. We've actually experienced a lot of success with these different things. From a renewable energy cooking standpoint, I suspect that a lot of this carbon finance is going to initially actually go into the upfront cost, because the costs are sort of prohibitively high at this point. So I would say that that would be the first, bridge to cross. And post that, I think depending on a lot of the other nitty-gritties, like the longevity of the contract, the price, etc., this revenue can be used for also the OPEX, so to speak, for the maintenance of the product. So this is where I think it plays a significant role. If there are any questions or any requirements in terms of what those specific numbers are, I'm happy for anyone to reach me offline and can share that.
Thank you very much. Did you have any quick thoughts on the kind of the IoT sort of side? The kind of is it fully available? Is it a challenge? Is it something you're actively working on?
Yeah, absolutely. In our experience, it no longer remains a challenge to access IoT-based devices. In fact, the gold standard is now doing some work around through its digital MRV working group, looking at how the entire issuance cycle can be end-to-end, digitized in a way that issuance frequencies can go up, the requirements for on-site audits, etc., can go down and stuff like that. And in the two geographies that we are actively working, which is Kenya and India, we've seen not only the cost of these IoT devices come down significantly, but also the access and the real-time use of these IoT devices is to be seen, is seen to be believed. So I think these are great additions. These are great options right now. And ultimately, what I was saying earlier in terms of learnings from the voluntary carbon market, any methodology, any intervention, to my mind, has to come inbuilt with these IoT and metering options. Without that, I think we sort of run the risk of going back to square one, especially on integrity.
Fantastic. Thank you. Very much agree with that. Anantha, thank you for rejoining. Do you want to try speaking again now?
Yeah, can you hear me now? Yeah, is that audible? Okay, perfect. So I'll not take too much time, just maybe a quick 30 seconds on that. Affordability, that's exactly what carbon helps. The end users that we are targeting are will not be able to afford the actual cost of the product. So there is a need for like upfront subsidy for us to be able to scale and reach more end users. But also the carbon revenue could also be used as a driver for usage. Like you need to have like continuous maintenance and end user connection for you to be able to ensure they use the product more continuously. So that's the need for that affordability and operation side of things. On IoT, yes, I think last few years, I think the cost of IoT has come down, and now we have a lot of retrofit options accessible to be able to you don't need to have like actual device integrated like IoT measuring metering system. You could also use that retrofit for you to be able to like have that flexibility. So
tremendous, thank you. So we've only got a couple of minutes left. My only job as chair is to try and bring us to conclusion pretty much on time. So I've asked each of the panelists if they can just make a kind of a very brief closing statement, anything they particularly want to bring out. What's your kind of one message in particular to people who are entering these markets but are maybe a little bit further behind the curve than MEC and Up Energy? What's your kind of main recommendation for how to proceed? Let's go Samir, Anantha, and then Sriskandar to conclude.
Well, looking at from a general perspective, I would say that look at the conditions for the regulation, if the regulations are already there at the local level or not, and look at the in terms of the fees and contributions that the projects developers will have to make, because that will affect the feasibility of the projects, one. And I guess also wanted to touch upon a little bit with respect to the affordability issue is traditionally it has been looked at, carbon financing being used as buying down the upfront cost of these devices, but trying to bring in the other commercial financial institutions into the picture to better utilize the carbon financing in terms of its scaling up potential, given and also then looking at the particular structure of the financing institutions in that particular country. One, and then also perhaps also look at the requirement going ahead with respect to integrity also of sharing the revenues and the benefits, which I think will be important going forward, especially also Article 6.4, particularly now looking at it to develop a concept note and standards for equitable benefit sharing in the future. So I think going forward, the rules of the games are going to change, and these will be some of the rules I think that will be important to not only from a technical perspective of maintaining the integrity, but from larger social safeguards perspective of maintaining the integrity of the credits. Yeah, that's my take.
Okay. Rules are going to continue to change. I guess that's always a good area for researchers to be engaged in then. Anantha, your kind of final comments, please.
Yeah. For first and foremost is the government engagement and understanding of the local context, the NDC targets, whether the project type would be the right fit. Then developing a high integrity conservative project. It's not about generating carbon credits. For you to be able to sell that, you need to show that the project is of high integrity and transparency and accuracy is maintained. Then like the best option is to hang to more long-term forward offtakes, considering the volatile nature of the market. Best is 6.2. Like look at Article 6.2 bilateral engagements, and you have price protection. You're able to put your investment in a more secured way. So those are the guidance there. Yeah, thanks.
Great, thank you very much. Sriskandar, last word from you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm afraid I'm going to end up echoing a lot of stuff that Samir and Karthik just said. But I think just to keep abreast of some of the technicalities and how the Article 6 is bound to be different from the CDM and the voluntary carbon market as we've known them. Focus on integrity in the context of cook stoves, and sort of ensure that smart meters, IoTs, etc., are part of your design from day number one. Karthik spoke about it, but I think the golden principle in the carbon market is to err on the side of conservativeness. And I just want to conclude by saying that I think given that we are now moving into Article 6 territory, the onus I think is on all of us to ensure that we don't repeat past mistakes, we don't overcredit, and we make sure that we are able to deliver the impact that the communities truly need.
Very nice. Thank you so much. So I'm not going to take much time to wrap up because I think we're a couple of minutes already over time. I mean, the three things, well, one always has to have three things. The three things that I've really taken from the conversation, one actually is that you've all really pushed the issue about behavior change. The carbon markets is partly about encouraging high utilization of good cooking technologies, but also about continued use over time through being able to fund maintenance, service, ongoing consumer engagement. And that's a really important point. Methodologies, clearly there are a variety of methodologies and there's a lot of work going on to try to make sure that what comes through in 6.4, for example, represents the best of what we know about. But also the point being made earlier that 6.2 is in a sense allows for different methodologies almost by negotiation between the two parties, the bilateral parties. And that's both an opportunity, but it's also potentially challenging and confusing because everyone has to work out what's a good methodology to have in there. But ultimately, the point is that we need high integrity, we need conservative approaches to avoid the mistakes of the past, as we heard. And that for now, my third point, I suppose, for now, there are a variety of mechanisms, voluntary and compliance, but the compliance for now, at least, of some different flavors. And I'm afraid it is, therefore, for everybody, quite an area of of uncertainty, and you will need to be looking for sources of good advice and good information. And I hadn't meant to plug MECS resources, but the MECS website does have a section of resources around the carbon market, some very general guides, some very specific ones, even some calculators to calculate what the typical cost of a carbon project might be. So if you're stuck on information, maybe that would be a good place to start. I think we're done with the panel. I'm sorry we're a little bit over time. I'll hand back to Vimal. Is there anything you need to say and wrap up?
So I will just say thank you. Thank you all for being there.
Very good. Well, thank you to the panelists, to my three panelists, and our fourth quasi panelist, and thanks to Finovista for organising. I hope everyone on the call got something out of it. I guess it's recorded, so you can you can pass it on to your colleagues to hear the words of wisdom from our panel. And I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.